From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell and I'm in Southampton this week because I've been commentating on the latest round of the 100-ball competition here in England. Also, I've been getting fully immersed in the closing stages of the FIFA Women's World Cup. And of course, there is a new England-Australia rivalry that has developed and born out of the semi-final. You know, we're so used to seeing England and Australia go up against each other at high level in so many other sports. And gosh, we've had that, haven't we, with the Ashes and the Netball World Cup this summer in particular. There's a Rugby World Cup coming up too with the men. But yes, the Matildas, well, they are a rising force. I reckon in soccer, football, we're going to see many more contests between England and Australia on the field with the round ball as well. Jim, what do you reckon?
It has been a sporting phenomenon in the last week for Australia to have got to that game against England. And England were too good for them on the night. But I've never seen so many people involved in watching the game. They had big screens all over the country set up at various grounds. They had more people watching on television. 7 million out of a population of 26 million watched the game against England. So this is the most extraordinary. If you'd have said 10 years ago, the next big television sporting event is going to be a football match with women playing. What? Anyway, it's been extraordinary and a wonderful boost for all of us in rather wintry conditions as we think about some cricket that's coming up at some point in the future. But you can't find a word about cricket in the last week. It's been all Matildas and the Lionesses.
So I'm Sunil Gupta for Akashvani in New Delhi, and I'm sitting here on the sideline watching the winner of what I'd call the Sashes, the soccer Ashes, and the sporting losers, the Matildas. I watched that game, and I can tell you we were riveted, absolutely riveted. There were some absolutely sensational goals, and I thought the Matildas had a very, very good chance of coming back in. But their talismanic Sam Kerr didn't actually get over that particular line, but you could see why. They are one of the most loved teams in the world, certainly in Australia. But just to come back to the cricket, well, India lost a bilateral series against the West Indies after 16 or 17 long years. And that is saying something. There's a bit of a kerfuffle in the press, in the media about all this. But I think what India is really worried about now is that they don't seem to have a settled white ball team ready for the World Cup, which is 2 months away. And that, I think, is really putting the cat amongst the pigeons here. You've got Bumrah returning after injury, going off to Ireland, leading the team. And I guess this is going to be one seminal test for what that team is going to look like as and when October comes by.
Yeah, they don't have long, Sunil, do they, to get ready for the World Cup? Great to have you with us on the show once again. Well, first up on Stumped this week, debut performances don't go much better than this.
As in comes Johnson, and this is high in the air, mid-off underneath. It should be a simple catch, and another wicket falls. 1 off 1. Johnson, and he's bowled him through the gate. Hartley goes, the plan works, and Johnson's figures just keep getting better and better as in comes Johnson bowling, and he's got him. A third wicket for Johnson. This has been one of the most remarkable spells of bowling and one of the most strange innings of cricket I've ever seen.
Well, that was the bowling of 27-year-old Australian with Italian heritage, Spencer Johnson, making his first appearance for the Oval Invincibles in the 100 competition in the UK, where, I've got to say, caused a complete social media meltdown, taking 3 wickets, but crucially conceding just 1 run out of the 20 deliveries bowled. That was in a victory over Manchester Originals at the Oval, and he bowled with serious pace. I was at that match. Regularly over 90 miles an hour, troubling England's best white ball batters in Jos Buttler, the England captain, and Phil Saltz. And this all came after being named in Australia's T20 squad for the very first time. A lot of people around the world didn't seem to know a lot about Spencer, so we wanted to get him on the programme. Spencer, it is great to have you on Stumped. We're really pleased to have a chat. And you first caught the eye in the Big Bash League for Brisbane Heat last season in Australia, but when people heard that you were making a 100 debut, I think a lot of people assumed you must be a sort of 20-year-old making a debut and starting out. And then when they learn you're 27, the same question pops up, as did in Australia. Where have you been? What's the story? So tell us, fill us in on your journey, because it's been one of quite a few ups and downs, hasn't it?
I feel like there's a bit of deja vu coming here and getting the similar treatment that I got when I debuted for the Heat. But it's been a different journey. It's unique coming in now at 27 and sort of not being seen before is different. But I probably wouldn't change it. I had a tough time with injury at my early 20s, just with a few stress fractures and just your standard bowling injuries. But body's harder now, and to come out the other side, it's quite cool.
You've dominated at grade level, West Torrens, which is club my cousin plays for, so you wanted to give a big nod to that. Beautiful. How did South Australia support you as well? Because I read that you had to take another job at one point in order to sort of keep yourself going financially, when doing all of that rehab.
Well, West Torrens, they've been awesome for me. I've been there since I was a kid, I guess. Just through performances there, I worked my way back in, and I did have to do a bit of odd work here and there, greenskeeping and mowing lawns and things like that. But I think that's made me who I am now, and I've sort of done the work life and done the cricket life, and now I'm here.
Which golf club were you at with the greenskeeper?
I was actually just doing the ovals, so I was curating. So obviously Henley, and there was a couple other grade grounds that I was looking after. But sitting on a roller for 8 hours on a Friday and then trying to bowl on a Saturday wasn't all that fun, especially when it gets quite hot in Adelaide, as you'd know. That was wearing quite thin, and was really looking forward to hopefully getting back into cricket setup, because it was a tough couple of years there, but it's all worth it now.
Yeah, I don't think you'll be sitting on too many rollers in the future. I was up in the commentary box at the Oval watching that incredible debut performance. And with me was the world's all-time leading test wicket taker amongst fast bowlers, James Anderson, more expert in swing than extreme pace. But this is what he had to say about your performance. We thought we'd play it to you.
For me, if I was Australia, I'd be like, get him a contract, just make sure they can look after him. You imagine Spencer in the World Cup in India, October, November for Australia would be incredible. Yeah, they need to get hold of him and make sure that those injuries don't creep back.
Wow, that's quite cool. I didn't know he was commentating, but I did see him there. I thought, geez, there's 650 test wickets right there. For him to say that, the tough times and the struggle, then you come out the other side and you hear things like that, and to get recognised by your peers, that's really special.
And just before Jim comes in, what have the Australian selectors been saying to you so far? It's obviously named in the T20 squad. They've put out the initial squad for the World Cup, but do you get a sense at all that, you could be an injury away from a late call-up even for India perhaps?
Yeah, it's been quite crazy. The first comms I had with Bales was just before a one-day final in Australia, and I didn't actually have his number and let it ring through, and then I thought, I better ring it back, and it was Bales, and he got picked for a Aussie A series in New Zealand. And that was after, I think I'd only played 2 first-class games at that stage and only a handful of one-dayers. So things were happening quite quickly back then even. And then, obviously, most recently the South African tour. And he just sort of, he said, we're keen to have you around this summer. So hopefully keep bowling well, and who knows what could happen.
Spencer, Jim Maxwell here in Sydney, congratulations on your achievements so far this year. Perhaps can think of what's happening to you now in terms of Pat Cummins' early years, where he spent most of his time at Western University in Sydney rather than playing cricket. So has he given you any advice?
No, not yet. I actually saw him at Travis Head's wedding. There was a couple of Aussie players at Head's wedding, and they sort of, Starkey and the big quicks, Hazelwood and Pat were there, and they sort of said, loving the journey you're on, keep going. So, that was quite cool.
So how have you handled the sort of the mental side of all this being in limbo and now, of course, coming back as you have so impressively?
I don't know. I guess it's happening so fast that you can't really sit back or I think back to that Big Bash game at my debut, and the commentators are saying, where's he been? And then you sort of blow up a little bit. Yeah, I guess it's happening too quick to realise what's actually going on, I reckon. For me, in my close circle, I think it's quite cool for my family to see and my partner to see what's happening behind the scenes. And I think they're just as excited as I am, to be honest. They're absolutely loving it.
Yeah, hi, Spencer. This is Sunil Gupta in New Delhi, and I believe that you were representing Italy. Now, cricket is not the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Italy. So what happened there? I mean, from Italy back to Australia, very big jump indeed.
Yes, well, that's very proud heritage there. My nonno was from the north of Italy, so he migrated to Australia when he was about 20. But yeah, the passport I've had for probably over 12 months now, and it was something I was sort of looking towards when things weren't looking that good in Australia and even South Australia, to be honest. It was sort of a way in to get my name out there, and I think a few performances for Italy would have sort of sparked a bit of media or a bit more attention. So that was the plan, to help Italy get to the World Cup. They just actually played in Scotland, and they did well, but they didn't quite qualify. So I was meant to play in that, but when the Major League Cricket tournament came up, that was sort of a too good of opportunity to toss up. The first Major League Cricket tournament in America for the Knight Riders franchise, which was very cool to be a part of. So unfortunately for Italy, we had to give that one a miss.
Yeah, and what's your aim in the short and long term now that you've played for the franchise there in the Major League? Any chances of IPL sort of floating in your mind? Do you think that might be an option now that they've seen you in action? Besides, of course, playing for Australia.
Yeah, my short term will obviously, I've got 2 games here left, and then head to South Africa. Hopefully play well there, and then once those T20s are done in South Africa, back to Australia in the domestic summer, hopefully perform there. And then IPL would be amazing, something I've always dreamt about as a kid, to be in India and play cricket in India, but it's so far away and really out of my control. The only thing I can control is what I do tomorrow, really. So if that came up, it would be awesome, but it's a long way away still.
Well, that was Spencer Johnson, who could be a future star of Australia at the age of 27.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on Akashvani.
Now, just over a year ago, we were talking about Ben Stokes' decision to retire from one-day international cricket. But, like Moeen Ali in the Ashes, he's back. The England men's test captain has said he's coming out of retirement to play in the World Cup in India in just a couple of months' time. Now, as recently as last month, Stokes reiterated that he remained retired from ODIs and he planned to use a 6-month break from test cricket to sort out the long-term issue he's had with his left knee. I remember he ended up playing as a batter only in the Ashes, really, because of it, and England did miss his bowling. Jim, we all know how committed Ben Stokes is to his country as Test captain. Were you surprised, though, by the news of the World Cup in any way?
No, not at all. It was the greatest certainty since rain came down at Old Trafford, I reckon. So he's always going to be coming back if he was fit. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He doesn't want to miss out, particularly at the moment where his star's risen so strongly. And just hope that, his body can manage it. That's the question, because he may only have another couple of years before something serious happens. But yeah, no surprise.
Yeah, I think that's been why there's been somewhat, in some quarters, a mixed reaction from England fans who kind of want to protect him for the test game and thought it was a great idea that he would have a break from cricket, sort out the knee and be, fully fit and firing for the India tour to come and, further beyond as well. But, even as a batter at the World Cup, he's such a talismanic figure, isn't he? And you think of the experience, that he's had in clutch World Cup moments, it's irreplaceable. You think to the 2019 World Cup final in particular and the super over, getting England over the line then, the hand he played in the most recent T20 World Cup. But even, I suppose, that the experience he had of being hit for all those sixes by Carlos Brathwaite in a losing T20 Cup final as well. And I suppose, Sunil, the fact that he had asked Moeen to come out of retirement and Moeen had agreed, it would feel a little bit, tricky for him to say no when the same question was asked as him.
Funny enough, I was just thinking about those sixes that were hit by Carlos Brathwaite, and that was the Eden Gardens in Calcutta or Kolkata. And so India will not have very happy memories for it. Maybe that's one thing he wants to redress, because I'm sure somewhere in the back of his mind it's niggling. He's a proud man. Jim is absolutely right. He would never give up a chance like this, especially having won the previous World Cup. But eventually you've got to think about the future as well. ODI games, white ball games are very stressful. They're strenuous. You've got to go for it every moment of the game. And certainly in terms of his bowling, he hardly played in the IPL games. So I think he's got to think about it. And of course, England have got to treat him with kid gloves, when he's playing for them, because if he's in the team, he's going to play. And I don't think he's going to be bowling, certainly not on the pitches here in India. So it's going to be purely as a batsman. And I think maybe that is the one thing that is the saving grace for him when he comes to India, because I think his, as you said, talismanic feel in the team, what he brings to the team and to other teams as well. They've seen what he's done. So I think that it's a psychological thing that is actually playing the mind of the England team to have him with them in the World Cup here in India. So yes, as Jim said, it was absolutely a no-brainer if he was going to be invited. Maybe he'd invite himself, actually. I was thinking, going to say, hello, here I am. I'm available if you want me. But I'm looking forward to seeing him. And certainly if he comes and he plays, I'm looking forward to seeing him. No question.
Definitely. It was quite amusing that when the news broke and was officially confirmed, Stokes just tweeted LOL, lol, which was the same response that Moeen gave him when he first said Ashes to Moeen. So, yeah, good from Stokes. On the flip side, Jim, when you look at the squad that England have put out for their ODI series against New Zealand, which is the sort of precursor to their World Cup squad coming out, there is no Harry Brook, I guess, because of Ben Stokes coming in. And that's, a big name that a lot of England fans have latched onto, saying, well, how can you leave out Harry Brook? I mean, what would you have done in that circumstance?
It's a problem. I mean, they've got Liam Livingstone and David Milan scored 400s in the 36 50-over games that they've played since the last World Cup. They played 80-odd before 2019, so they haven't played as much of that form of the game. And he's only, I think, played 3 games. So he's a bit stiff. But, I think it was, unfortunately for him, just a simple matter. Well, if Stokes is playing, there's no room for Harry.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped here on Akash Varney. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport. Make sure you use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And check us out on YouTube as well. Go to the BBC World Service on YouTube. My thanks to Sunil Gupta and Jim Maxwell and to all of you for listening. We'll speak to you again next week. Bye for now.
Stumped is a BBC Sport production for the BBC World Service in association with ABC and Akash Varney.